What is up, everybody? This is the Wild Nutrition Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Heskett, and this is episode 68, and we have another Unapologetic Friday here today. I know I'm running late and posting this not at 5 a.m. in the morning, but currently it's like 10 a.m. So, just the week got away from me, and here we are. So, I wasn't sure what to do, so we're going to do things a little bit different. We're going to do a Q&A from a lot of the questions you guys have been asking me over the past couple of weeks, so we're going to dive into those. So it's just going to be more of a Q&A type thing. I'm going to say some of the questions I get and give you guys an answer. So it's going to cover a lot more topics than just like one topic today. But we're still going to set the timer, and we're going to try to keep things nice and short. But if you guys obviously have more questions, always feel free to reach out to me. But with that being said, let's get into it. So first question, should I track macros, and how do I figure out my macros? So tracking your macros is going to be one of the fastest ways to change your body, to build muscle, burn body fat, improve athletic performance, improve your energy. The reason for this is you are tracking exactly what kinds of food you're eating, where the energy is coming from, and that's going to tell you if you need to change anything the fastest way possible. If we use other methods, which there's nothing wrong with other methods, they're just slower. When things stop working, you have to spend more time trying to figure things out, versus with macros, we can kind of pinpoint like right away, like, hey, you've been going over on carbs. Like, that's why you're under on protein, over on carbs. That's why you're not seeing results. It's as easy as that, week in, week out. Versus some other methods like, okay, well, I see you hit all your stuff, but what kind of carbs were you eating? Were you actually like doing a serving size, or were you doing more like a serving and a half because you're just using your hand? Were you sneaking in any fats with those carbs? So it's just by hearing that, you should assume that other methods, while they are super effective and easy to use, they're going to be generally a little bit slower, especially if you don't have a ton of weight to lose. So portion control, if you have a lot of weight to lose, like 50 plus pounds, you can get amazing results just doing that. But if you have like maybe 10 pounds to lose, it's going to be slow. It's just a matter of how much weight your body has to lose. The more there is, the less work you have to do to actually get that rolling. So should you track? If you have the mental capacity for it and the ability to do it consistently right now, you should definitely track macros. But if you don't have the mental capacity to do it, then use other methods. You don't have to track all of them. When it comes to weight loss, just protein and calories are the most important. But if you start going into like athletic performance, like you want to run a 10K, you want to build muscle, you want to do a tough mudder, things like that, then it's going to change to, okay, we need to get more specific. But if your goal is just weight loss, which many of you that is, then it doesn't matter the carb and fat amounts too much. Next thing goes into my opinion on intermittent fasting. So the way I view all diet protocols is going to be, they're like tools in a tool belt. So macros is like generally like the tool that's going to get us the fastest results. Portion control gets us amazing results. Intermittent fasting is another tool we can use for some people. Now, I think a lot of women use this because they think it's a simple solution, and they do almost like borderline disordered eating of like, wait, I gotta skip a meal. I'm not hungry in the morning, so I'm just going to skip a meal. As like the way it's brought about is like that's almost like disordered. Like, oh, I can just eat one meal a day. I'm just going to do that. Like, I'm seeing some what's your relationship with food? Or people who have very high stress lives tend to not do well because they wake up, they're like, oh, I'm already not hungry in the morning. I'm just going to not eat. But what happens is when we wake up, there's a cortisol waking response. So during the morning, cortisol starts to rise in our bloodstream. Naturally, this isn't a bad thing. That's how your body wakes up. So that's rising. Well, if you have a very, very high stress life, your cortisol is already high, and you're probably not getting great sleep on top of that because of the stress level. So that's already going to have high cortisol levels, and then you're naturally rising as you wake up. And then the best way to blunt cortisol, to like stop it from constantly increasing, is to eat food. Actually, insulin helps to blunt it, so it stops that rise. Well, if you're high stress, you're having a cortisol rise in the morning, it can get really, really high, and that's where you're like just really stressed out, and cortisol is going to cause your blood sugar to increase by breaking down fat and muscle tissue and stuff. Basically, it's just like mobilizing things to use for energy. So what happens is then your blood sugar gets really high, insulin comes in, and then you're going to like have too much blood sugar and then go on the blood sugar crash afterwards. So we need to eat something, but a lot of people will just be like, oh, I'm just not going to eat. And then next thing they know, it's like lunchtime and they're like, oh my God, I have to eat everything. So that's where I don't like intermittent fasting for everyone. In fact, I don't think it's a great thing for beginners who don't have a great relationship with food and who don't fully understand everything with their bodies. And a lot of people will fight me on like, I know my body. No, you don't. No, if you think carbs are bad, you don't know your body. If you think, because we have all these filters, so you've been taught all these years through fad diets and just shitty influencers that certain things are just bad. So you have this filter and you view pasta as bad. If you immediately you're like, oh, I can't eat that, I will gain fat. That's fucking wrong. No. So that's where, no, we need to break those things first, and then we go into maybe a fasting approach in the future, if that's the right thing for you. Most people don't need to do fasting, though. And a lot of people just use it as a way to almost be borderline disordered eating, and then they really risk getting malnourished and having a host of issues there. So it's also really not ideal for building muscle. So if you want like that toned look, which is a question we have coming up, if you want to have muscle mass, it's okay for maintaining your muscle mass. It is really bad at building muscle mass. And if you want to look toned, you want to have muscle, it is not good. So next one, best way to eat wild game while dieting. So most wild game is going to be very, very lean. You can include that just like you would chicken, unless it's ground, in which case make sure you figure out what kind of ground it is. Is it 80-20, 85-15, 90-10? If you grind it yourself, what do? So we just ground up the rest of ours and we have like another 20 pounds, and it's definitely fattier. It's closer to like a 85-15. So that's going to be a fattier source of meat. I treat that more like beef versus some of the other cuts we're going to treat more like, you know, if you're tracking macros, it's very close to like boneless, skinless chicken breast. So best way to do it is it's super lean, very easy to fit into your diet. When you're trying to figure out recipes for it, I always view it more like lamb than beef because of the size of the animal. But you can use it for pretty much anything that calls for any kind of red meat or even pork, we will use it for. So you don't need special recipes unless it's really gamey. In which case, you know, you can't know that until you try a piece, and then once you try a piece, then we can use like more intense flavorings and spices and vinegars and things, or soak it in milk to remove any gaminess if that's there. Why focus on protein while dieting? So protein is going to be the most filling thing. We also know with research that if you take two different diets, a high carb diet and a high fat, low carb diet, so high carb, low fat, high fat, low carb, make sure I was saying that right. It's still sleep deprivation from 2 kids, even though I got better sleep last night. So you take those, if the calories are the same and the protein levels are the same, the weight loss is the same. In fact, they showed that the high carb group was actually slightly better, but it wasn't statistically significant. So it's not really worth it. It's whatever works best for you. So that's why we focus on protein. Protein is very difficult for your body to turn into body fat. It has to go through all these different things, and by the time it gets there, it's taking up a lot of energy, and it's really not worth it. It's much easier for your body to actually take the protein and store it as either excrete it or store it as actual protein, which your biggest storage area is muscle mass. So we find that if you eat a very high protein diet, you will start to put on some muscle mass. If you've gone from a low or moderate protein to a high protein diet, you will put on some muscle mass because your body will store that in your muscles. It's also easier for your body to convert amino acids, protein that's broken down, that's amino acids, into carbohydrates. So it's a process called gluconeogenesis. Your body can convert, I think it's 150 grams, but don't quote, I haven't looked it up, nor do I have the stats in front of me. And it's been a while since I've looked it up, so I'm not 100% sure what the exact amount is, but your body's really good at turning excess protein into carbohydrates. So if you think about the process, the body wants to be as efficient as possible. So to convert to body fat, the body would have to first convert excess protein into carbs. Then any excess carbs, it would have then convert into body fat. That process, all those processes take energy and resources being like vitamins, minerals, etc. So your body doesn't want to do that. It doesn't want to go through all those steps. It would rather just be like, okay, we went to the liver, got converted into carbohydrates, we use the carbohydrates up. That's how it would prefer to do it. And especially if you're dieting, you're probably not maxing out your glycogen stores. Again, even with carbs, so this is something a lot of people don't know. If you eat a high-fat diet, you get really good at burning fat. The problem is you also get really good at storing fat because that's the main energy source, fuel source you're using in your body. If you eat more carbs, your body gets really good at burning carbs, but it also gets really good at storing carbs. So it doesn't convert into body fat. Your storage areas for carbohydrates are going to be your liver, where you're going to store about 100 grams per day or more for some people. And then in your muscles, you can store a shit ton, especially if you're active and have a lot of muscle mass. You can be storing over 500 grams a day or 500 grams total. But in the liver, it gets used up almost every single day, pretty much every day. And your muscle mass, it only gets used up as you exercise. So if you're not exercising, especially intense exercise that uses carbohydrates, you're not going to burn through those stores. The point I'm getting at is if you eat carbs and you're on a diet, generally you're not maxing out your glycogen stores, so your body just soaks them up like a sponge and puts them at the easiest places possible. It's not converting into body fat because that takes energy and resources to convert into body fat. It would rather just store it where there's openings. And when we talk about insulin resistance is because stores are maxed out in both the muscles and body fat, and everything's saying like, hey, we don't have any room. It's kind of like if you have an overstuffed closet and you try to keep shoving stuff in there, and eventually it's just like, no, like you can't, and you're like banging with your shoulder on the door to try to close the door. Like that's kind of the approach of like insulin resistance. Well, as you exercise, you're going to burn through a lot of those carbs and you open up those stores and you become more insulin sensitive. Anyways, long-winded thing, but focus on protein. That's one reason. Also, well, it's very filling. So helps push other things out of your diet. Anyone who's tried to eat a pound of chicken breast at one time knows it's very challenging and you're probably not going to be that hungry afterwards. With that being said, certain proteins are going to be more filling than others. The leaner the protein, the more filling it is. For example, eat 1 pound of boneless, skinless chicken breast. Challenging. Eat 1 pound of a ribeye steak. No problem. My wife will be topped out at 8 ounces of chicken breast. Oh my God, I can't eat it. I give her a 20-ounce steak. She can destroy the whole thing. So steak is very high in fat, like a ribeye. So it's very tasty, and your body's like, give me more of that, versus chicken, your body's like, why are we having all this protein? I'm full, I don't need any more. Find something else, or that's good enough. How do I get toned? So when we're talking about tone, it's two things. So a lot of people just think, especially women, mostly women, think toned means lose weight. What toned is actually you need to lose weight and then build muscle so you actually have that toned look. And the approach to getting toned is the same approach you would use if you wanted to become a bodybuilder. See, the body adapts in the same way. You don't need special toning bullshit workouts, which don't work, guys, unless you have amazing genetics. And probably if you're listening to my podcast, you don't have amazing genetics. Welcome to the club, neither do I. So you don't have the genetics just to put on a ton of muscle mass super quick. You wouldn't be having this conversation if this wouldn't be your question. So you need to actually like do resistance training, lift weights, get stronger with big compound lifts and some isolation movements. So compound lifts being like bench press, rows, deadlifts, squats, lunges, and less of the bicep curls and lateral raises and leg extensions. Big compound lifts is where you want to be at, and you want to get stronger over time using something like a 8-12-8 method, where you start with 8 reps, you work your way up till you can do whatever weight you did for 8 for 12 reps, and then increase the weight till you find a weight you can only do for 8 reps, and keep repeating until you get strong and jacked. Now, the body adapts in the same way. It's the same process for building muscle. So if you're worried about getting big, guess what you do? You just stop trying to progress. You get to a point where you're happy with your muscle growth, and then you change a training program. That's how it works. So women will be like, oh my God, I don't want to get bulky. Like, guess what? You could stop. It's not a light switch. You're not going to go from like one day being like, oh, like I'm like skinny fat, I don't have any muscle, I want to get jacked, and then you wake up, you do one weightlifting workout or a week of weightlifting workouts, you wake up the next Monday, you're like, oh my God, I'm Ronnie Coleman. I'm going to step on the Mr. Olympia stage and my voice is like a man. I sound like Chris now. Like, that doesn't happen. It's a very slow process over time, and once you're happy with how you look, you can stop. You can just change. Instead of trying to focus on muscle growth, you can change to like, I'm going to work on endurance now. I'm going to work on just building strength. By the way, the reason powerlifters are stronger than bodybuilders but smaller than powerlifters is some strength is neurological, and you can work on a lower volume approach to strength and not build muscle. That's why there's weight classes in powerlifting. You can stay within your weight class. You might build a tiny bit more muscle, but you can always just stop and just maintain the current muscle mass you have with a different style of program. So that's important to know, because a lot of people think you need special workouts, or that it's, if you do a workout that's really effective, that you're just going to wake up and be like 50 pounds of muscle put on you. And if you find a workout that does that, please let me know, because it took me like 17 years to put on 50 pounds of muscle. So please let me know. I would like to know what program that is. But that's really not the case. That somebody would have figured that out already. Best workouts for fat loss. Whatever workouts you enjoy. For one, more people need to get moving, and then whatever you can recover from. So a lot of people will think HIIT is the best for fat loss. I used to as well. And if you're younger, you don't have a ton of stress in your life, yeah, it can be a really, really effective tool to burning body fat. In fact, I did a lot of HIIT, but the best thing is probably going to be more like resistance training, weights, and then 1 day a week of HIIT training for fat loss if you can recover. So that's the important thing. If you're not recovering, your body's stressed, and we know too much stress, you're going to hold on to body fat. So I like to do zone 2 cardio for the day in between your resistance training workouts. And then again, 1 day of HIIT. And what I mean by HIIT is true HIIT, which should only be like 10 to 15 minutes. If you do actual HIIT workouts and you can go for 40 minutes, you are not going intense enough. HIIT is supposed to be high intensity. High intensity. That means when the intensity is high, it should be like as intense and hard as you can do, and then you recover, and then you go again as hard and as intense as possible. So the best way to see if you are trying to do it as hard and as intense as possible, if you're doing a HIIT workout. So a lot of HIIT workouts are going to be like 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. That's not a HIIT workout, by the way. Or we're going to go 1 minute on, 30 seconds off. That's not a HIIT workout. That's intervals. It's not a HIIT workout. Actual HIIT workout is going to be a work to rest ratio. This is important because this is something like we learn, like myself, like as we get our strength and conditioning certifications and we're training athletes, this also applies to you, what a work to rest ratio and the recovery times. So you want something like a 1-2, 1-3, or even a 1-4 work to rest ratio. So 1-2 meaning 30 seconds on, 1 second off. 1 to 3 being like 15 seconds on, 45 seconds off. But during the time on is super, super intense. Think like almost all out sprint. I'm not going to say 100%, but you're going like 90%. And then when you're resting, you are resting. You're not doing jumping jacks or any of that bullshit. You are resting because when that timer's up, you're going all out again. And the best way to see if you're actually going all out is use like a machine that shows your power output, like your watts. So like a bike, stationary bike, one of those like sprinting treadmills where you actually have to like manually move it, an elliptical, a erg/rowing machine, something like that. If you have access to it, or an assault bike, look at your watts, go all out and see what your watts are. Okay, that was as hard as you can. Great. Next time the timer dings, you're going to match that. Okay, great. The timer dings. Next time, try and match that. What you're going to find is if you're actually going all out, that fatigue is going to build up and it's going to be impossible for you to match it. If you can maintain, which is what a lot of people do, maintain the same wattage output the entire time, you're just doing some shitty interval training and you're not going intense enough. This is why you shouldn't be doing it all the time, because the intensity is so high that your body actually needs to recover from it. And you should, if you do that for 10 rounds, which would be like 15 seconds on, 45 off for 10 minutes, you're going to be fried. If you do it for 15 minutes, which should be like the max time you do it, you're going to be exhausted. You're going to be totally wiped out. So you do not want to do that for like an hour. You're not going intense enough. You would be puking on the floor. Another thing is like sled pushes. Like so time sled pushes is a great one where you're going to push sled up and back, recover, try to do it in the same amount of time. So it'd be like every minute on the minute. I would do this where I would push a sled up and back, a weighted sled, and then whatever time, say that took 10 seconds, I would get 50 seconds rest. Then I would do it again. 50 seconds rest, do it again. And then the next thing you know, it's like a little bit slower. So now it's like 48 seconds rest. Then it's 45 seconds rest. And all of a sudden that fatigue's starting to build up more and more and more. And that's a sign that you are trying to go as intense as possible, but your body, the fatigue has built up. So that is actual HIIT workout. So that's intense. You can't do that every single day of the week. You will burn yourself out. And that's where zone 2 cardio comes into play. Walking comes into play, which, zone 2 is just above walking. And then weight training 3 to 4 times per week, unless you are training more like a bodybuilder, you're trying to get maximal muscle growth, in which case it's going to be close to 5 times per week for some people, but usually 4 to 5 times per week there. So the other thing is, don't do like isolation days. Like don't do like arm day, shoulder day, like bullshit like that. If you want to focus on more like fat loss, it's best to work mostly major muscle groups. So it's best to do like a upper body day, lower body day, a total body workout, push pull lower day. So it's better to do something like that where you're working lots of muscle groups and you're not spending like, okay, I have chest day and then I have back day, which is like a push pull and then leg day lower, but then I have arm day. No, like instead you should do like, if you like that, you should do like chest day, and on chest day you also hit triceps and shoulders, and then you have back day. On back day you do like your rear delts and biceps, and then leg day is leg day, and that's that for a push pull lower. Or you do an upper lower split, and like one day's like more like pressing emphasis, one day's more pulling emphasis, and for your lower body one day is like more quad emphasis. Like you're still going to work both sides of your legs, but one day is like squats are your main lift and the other day is like deadlifts are your main lift. So that's how you want to break those up. And things that are, so that's best workouts for fat loss. So we can go into more nuance. If you're just starting out, just start moving. Obviously, I made things sound a little bit more complicated. Hopefully I didn't talk over too many of your heads too much. Hopefully not at all. Hopefully everyone understood that. But you can always reach out and ask me questions. But best workouts for fat loss, if you're a beginner, just start moving. Go for a walk. More people just need to move. Don't get like, if what I just said confused the hell out of you, don't worry about it. That's more like the next level. Like first thing to do, just start walking. and then find some things you like, and then when you actually start to get dialed in and like, okay, now I want to take my results really seriously, I want to take working out really seriously, then we talk about more of the stuff that I just talked about. But a lot of people will just jump into like, I'm going to go from 0 to like the hardest thing ever, because I always imagine like if you watch National Treasure, the first one, like the guy, the Puritan guy or whatever, where he like whips himself, I always view like that's how we treat like fat loss, like it's a punishment for ourselves. Like workouts are going to be a punishment, so I need to do the hardest thing that I fucking hate, and I'm going to do it as hard as possible. And then in 4 weeks, like, why are you doing something you hate? Like, you're not going to stick with it. You hate it every single day. You're like dreading. You're like, but I'm sore. It feels so good, but I also like dread going to the gym every single time. It's like, well, maybe we should find something you enjoy. There's nothing wrong with enjoying yoga. It's not for me, but there's nothing wrong with it. And then if you like that, and you're like, I need to learn how to do handstands. Guess what? You're going to need to get strong. So you're going to have to lift some weights, because yoga won't get you the strength gains you need to do some of the higher level things. And then guess what? You're doing strength training to improve yoga, which is the thing you like to do. Ta-da! And so when you view like that, like you find something you really, really like, oh, I am working out. Maybe I don't like this as much. Like I don't like cardio that much, but I do it because it helps with my goals of like, I like weightlifting, I like hunting, I like hiking. So it helps me stay in shape for those things I like to do. So I have to remind myself, like, if I don't do it, I'm not going to like the results. So I'm going to go and do that thing. All right, last question, because we are over time and I have other things I need to get done today. So, thing holding people back from success. Number one thing is taking responsibility for yourself. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to do something about it. So, what I mean by it's not your fault is there's so much shitty information. Like, if you're in a position where you're like, I just don't know what to do, it's not your fault you're in that position. This can be things your parents have taught you, things you've done through learning on social media or whatever it is. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility now to actually do something about it. Nobody's coming to save you. There is no like white knight in shining armor coming to save you. You are the knight in shining armor, so you have to go and do something. And the other thing is accountability. You need someone to hold you accountable to the things you don't want to do, because change is hard and change isn't always fun. So there's a lot of things like we like to do and we don't like to do. So in my business, there's things like I just don't like doing, but guess what? I need to be held accountable. So I have a business coach who holds me accountable to doing those things, because I have to report back to them with how those things go. I have employees where every week I have to tell them how things are going. So if I don't do it, guess what? They're going to see like, hey, things aren't going so well. What the hell? Or why aren't these numbers in? Like your responsibility of plugging in these numbers on our weekly call every single week. So you need someone to hold you accountable to your results. And who will actually truly hold you accountable? So a lot of times a spouse or significant other is not great, because they'll say, yeah, this was me, by the way. This was me with my previous relationships, and it ends up not good. Hey, yeah, I'll hold you accountable. And then they're like either too nice when you need them to be hard, or they're too hard and they hurt your feelings, or you just don't fucking listen to them because they're your spouse or significant other, and you're like, fuck you, because you're on a level playing field with them. Versus if you have someone who's actually like a mentor, it's a different relationship. So if you have a friend who's like, yeah, I'll help you out, it's a different kind of relationship than you have with your significant other or spouse. Or if you have like a mentor, coach, etc., you hold them in higher standing. So you're like, I am the client, I am the athlete, I am the student, so you are the expert, you teach me how to do it. It's different. So when they say something with tough love, you're like, fuck, yeah, you're right. It doesn't hurt your it might hurt your feelings a little bit, but you're like, you know what, I just need to work on this, and I trust that what you're saying is coming from your heart. Versus when it's your spouse, you're like, that fucking hurts, fuck you, you're not getting laid for a month. Or flip, they are like, you know what, fuck you, yeah, like I'm holding out. So yeah, it is not ideal for most people. There's always exceptions, and you can find it online, but for most people, it's not ideal, because I've seen it time and time again. And usually the people who are exceptions are the people who are in the fitness industry already. They're already like pro level bodybuilders and fitness models, not probably you, the listener, or even myself. So they're just a different like level. So accountability is the other thing. We all have research that shows that when you actually invest in having someone hold you accountable and guide you through your results, you have a 95% chance of actually getting to that thing you want to do, as long as you are willing to put in the work. However, if you don't do that, it's about 50-50 shot if you have like a smart goal and have everything planned out. And if you don't do that, you're just like, I'm starting this diet, go. It's about like 10 to 20% success rate. So if you want the high success rate, it needs to be accountability. So with that being said, guys, we're 30 minutes in. That's going to be it for today. So happy fucking Friday. Hope you enjoyed this episode. It was a little bit different. So Q&A, if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And check down below. We are at the end of July, so we're going to start looking for bringing on the next round of clients for August. So if anything like hit home today, you're ready to make that commitment, you're ready to level up or actually start getting the results you want and deserve, then go down into the show notes, click the 101 how do I reword it? The PwC client application, the 101 coaching app. I forget exactly how I have it worded down there, but you'll see it's PwC client application is what I believe it says. So click that link. We'll have a short chat. It's no pressure call. If you're a great fit, we'll move forward. If you're not a good fit, I'll help you out with figuring out either if you need to do some homework before coming onto the program, or if another coach would be better for you. For example, if you are vegan, I'm not the right coach for you. I'm going to send you to my friend who is vegan, though, and have you get set up with her program, because she'll just be a better fit for you. But with that being said, enjoy your weekend, guys.